Sugriva says that Hanuman has also been waiting for Ram. And that when he finds him, Hanuman will bow down to him. He will be his faithful servant. Sugriva is going to show us once again that everything has already been written. She says, don't get caught up in the awfulness of the situation. Everything is being acted out just in the way it was foretold. This is the reason why Ram and Sita were born. Remember, just as we learned in the Gita, that even though individuals have free will and can make their own decisions and so forth, do they follow Dharma? Do they go against Dharma? The big picture of the universe is already laid out. It's already plotted. It's part of a design. And so knowing that Ravana was going to come into this world and commit all of these atrocities, it was decided that there would have to be someone, Ra's case, who would come into this world to defeat him. That evil has to be defeated in the long run. And so there is a purpose. Everything is foretold. Everything is laid out. What is meant to happen will happen. And here we're getting a confirmation of that. Sugriva had the obligation to wait and reveal this information, which she does. And so there's no reason why Ram shouldn't believe all that she says about Hanuman. Sugriva is going to finish up her story, and she tells Ram how to find Sugriva, the king of the monkeys. And having done all of that, she says, my duty is finally complete. And she walks into a fire and dies. Ram and Lakshman are going to travel on, and eventually they will reach the Rishyamunka mountains. Sugriva, the Monkey King, is going to spot them in the distance, but he fears that they were sent by his brother Vali to kill him. So he's going to send Hanuman out in disguise to find out who they really are and what they want. Now, Sugriva is the rightful ruler of the monkeys, but Vali, his brother, has usurped his power and taken control. And so we see another common theme being played out here. Just as in the Mahabharata, you had the Kurus usurping the power of the Pandavas, leading towards an evil action and the need to bring back righteousness to the kingdom. We see that being played out yet again in the case of the two monkeys, Sugriva and Vali. But anyway, Sugriva is worried that his brother is going to try to kill him to cement his position, his power. And so he's going to send Hanuman out in disguise to try to find out who these people are that are approaching them. Well, upon his approach, Ram is going to get a sense of who this holy man approaching him really is. But since he speaks a very elegant Sanskrit rather than the more common Hindi language, Ram is going to be temporarily misled. They're going to engage in a conversation for a while without really knowing or understanding who each other is. But finally, Hanuman is going to ask, "Who are you? What are you doing here? What is your purpose?" And Ram is going to tell him. As soon as Hanuman hears the word Ram, he becomes very excited, and he remembers who he is. He remembers that he was born to be Ram's eternal servant, and he falls down at Ram's feet. The question becomes, why do they not recognize each other immediately? Well, as Ram says, Hanuman's scholarship misled him. When a servant shows off to their master, there's going to be delusion. And so this serves as a reminder that one does not reach the truth or God by knowledge or study alone. It's not just through Gnan But more importantly, it is through bhakti. It is through devotional service of bowing down, of surrendering, of performing your duties and your actions for the divine. That's where truth ultimately comes from. And so this little incident here is a reminder of all of that. Hanuman then promises to be more humble in the future. And see, this is kind of an ironic thing because we know Hanuman for his humility, but yet in this initial meeting of Hanuman and Ram, we find him posing as this great learned scholar, this great Brahman. And so it misleads Ram a little bit. He doesn't quite know who he is. But Hanuman says, from this point onwards, I will be more humble always in the future. And he asks Ram if he would deliver a teaching to him. And Ram says, he is most dear to me, who has the steadfast conviction that he is the servant, and that the Lord, in the form of the whole animate and inanimate creation, is his master. Now, this one single line shows the necessary union of bhakti yoga with karma yoga. The need to link that yoga of devotion together with the yoga of action and selfless service. The dearest one to Ram, to God, is the one who sees himself as the servant, and everything else in existence as his master. What exactly does that mean? Well, it means that we have a duty to respect everything as God. That's the teaching. It goes back, I guess, in many ways to that concept of ahimsa that we keep talking about. To do harm to any living thing is to do harm to God himself. To violate any living thing is to violate God, because God is the one reality from which everything else emerges. And so if a person perceives themselves always as the servant, in a position of servitude towards anyone and everything else that they see, then that's the person that is most respected. That figure of great humility, the one who wants nothing more than to live a life that is completely selfless, whereby every action they perform is a service of devotion to God. And that's, what we learn from that one teaching that Ram delivers. So Hanuman now understands his role, and he grows himself to a tremendous, enormous size, and he takes Ram and his brother to meet the Monkey King. Now, en route, Hanuman explains that Sugriv was robbed by Vali of everything, and he asks him to help Sugriv to regain his position as the rightful ruler. If Ram will help him, then Sugriv says he will send all of the monkeys and the bears to help him search for Sita. So there's a bargain that's struck. If Ram will help Sugriv to regain and hold on to his rightful position, then he's willing to use that authority to help Ram. And so Ram and Sugriv, they make a pact that they're going to help each other. And Sugriv says that he's going to put his entire kingdom at Ram's service if restored to his rightful place. He says Vali, just like Ravana, is somebody who wants power for the sake of power. He is acting completely from the standpoint of ego and nothing else. He wants his own entity. He wants to be his own being, and he wants complete control of everything around him. He wants only to glorify himself. Well, Ram tells Sugriv to call Vali out in a fight. And despite his brother's superior size and strength, which has prevented him from doing this in the past, he says, don't worry about that. Call Vali out in a fight. Ram is going to hide behind a tree, and he says, I will kill Vali when the time comes. This explains to us, I think, that a person has to be willing to stand up for what's right. There has to be an obligation to do our duty. We have to be willing to face trial. We have to be willing to face hardship in order to stand up for what's right. Sugriv understands that it is his rightful place to rule the monkeys. Vali has stolen that from him. He understands that Vali is acting from a position of ego, and that this is going to lead to corruption and evil within the community of the monkeys. And so, despite the fact that he is outsized, outstrengthed by Vali, he has an obligation to stand up for what is right. Just like Arjuna and the Pandavas had the obligation to stand up against the might of the Kurus. Just like Rama has an obligation to stand up against the king of ego himself, against Ravana. So we have to be willing to stand up for what's right. But it also shows us that God is there to help us when we really need it. I gave you, when we talked about the Bhagavad Gita, I gave you the story of Prahlad Maharaj and his father Hiranyakashipu. And that story, too, is one that basically wants to illustrate that point, that God is there always to punish those who are corrupt and evil, and to offer protection to those who are his true devotees, to those who are his true people. So he's going to be there to help those when they really need it. But only God knows the right time for intervention. And sometimes the time that we think intervention is going to come, it's perhaps not. Because God knows that there's a better time, a better point in which it can serve a higher purpose. Now, what happens between Sugriv and Ram? What happens with the monkeys and the bears in the search for Sita? Well, you can keep reading, or you can come back on Thursday of next week, and we'll probably be able to finish off the rest of the story.